I'm the kind of man who writes things down. Grocery lists, oil change mileage, birthdays, even the little reminders no one else needs, like replace the porch bulb or call mom Thursday. Plans don't make life perfect, but they make life readable. In Austin, that rhythm kept me steady. An early workout, a desk that stayed clean, a truck that ran smooth, a calendar blocked out with colors I understood. When I met Lauren, order finally had a purpose. She was late afternoon sunlight. Warm, clear, honest, if you asked her for honesty. We fit in a way that felt like good shoes. No blisters, no drama, just pressure where it should be. Her parents, the Hayeses, treated me like they'd been waiting for someone exactly my speed. Mr. Hayes talked barbecue and lake levels. Mrs. Hayes asked about my mother and remembered her name the next time. It didn't take a genius to see the runway. Dates, dinners, holidays, proposal. Not flashy, solid. Evan, my best friend. Since middle school, filled in the spaces with nonsense and laughter, he's a human crash cymbal. Loud entrances, louder takes. You're the guy who irons socks, he told me once, grinning over tacos on South Congress. Women marry that guy. I rolled my eyes and paid the bill like I always did, and he smacked my shoulder and said it again, softer. No, I mean it. You're the one they build a life with. Then by Thanksgiving, the folder on my desktop, labeled December, had more than receipts and reminders. It had a screenshot of a ring. Classic, round, no halo. It had a PDF of the tasting menu at a small place by Lady Bird Lake, with a corner table that overlooked the water and a line in my notes that read, "Ask Mr. Hayes for blessing at 6:30, bring bottle." The ring lived in my jacket pocket, and the jacket lived on the back of my chair because I liked feeling the weight of the decision when I worked. I'd take it out sometimes at night, never for long, and check the way the stone caught the apartment's weak light. Nothing dramatic. Just right. Red flags don't march. They whisper. The first whisper came with a name. Tyler dropped in like a pebble. I bumped into Tyler after yoga, she said lightly, tossing keys into a bowl. He says hi. I looked up from my cutting board. Your coworker? Old friend, she said, already in the pantry. The second whisper came, as schedule slippage. A dinner bumped, a text delayed, a sudden, can we be more flexible? That didn't sound like her. I wrote it off as holiday chaos. People get weird in December, and I had a plan, didn't I? Plans do this dangerous thing. They make you loyal to outcomes over evidence. The Friday before Christmas, I left the office early to pick up a little gift for Mr. Hayes, an old-school Philly knife he'd admired when we were in Fredericksburg, and a scarf for Mrs. Hayes, soft as apology, because she'd mentioned her neck got cold in church. I texted Lauren from the parking lot, a simple, "Tomorrow by 7, I'll swing by yours, and we'll head to your folks together." The dots bubbled, then disappeared. When the phone finally rang, her voice came out like someone rehearsing a bad speech. "Hey, can we talk before tomorrow?" My chest tightened in the quiet wedge between us. "Sure, what's up?" She exhaled and didn't catch the breath on the way back. "Tyler's coming to Christmas dinner," she said, "with me." I've been hit in the sternum before. Once by a baseball. Once by a guy who didn't like the way I looked at his girlfriend in a bar. But this felt different. It wasn't impact, it was removal. Like someone lifted a floorboard and waited for me to fall. "You're bringing Tyler," I repeated to verify the physics of her sentence, "instead of me." She made a sound I couldn't classify. Apology, braided with defensiveness. "It's complicated." I reached behind me, and there it was. My jacket on the chair, the ring in the pocket, the weight I had learned to love. I slid 2 fingers into the pocket and pressed the box so hard the edges bit skin. "No," I said, "it's actually very simple. People romanticize blow-ups. They think clean endings come with clean exits." I didn't give a speech. I didn't raise my voice. I listened to a few more words that made nothing clearer. Then I said, "I'm not coming tomorrow, and I think we're done." Silence pooled. I added, "Take care of yourself." Because her mother raised her right and my mother raised me right. And then I hung up. I put the ring on the coffee table. the knife and scarf beside it, and stared at them until they were shapes, not meanings. I slept on Evan's couch that night. He didn't ask questions. He handed me a blanket and a beer and let the game run in the background, volume low. Around midnight, he said, "You want me to egg a car?" I laughed for the first time in hours. "Which car?" "All of them," he said, and his smile faded into something protective. "We don't talk a lot about loyalty. We live it." I kept my phone face down on Christmas Eve, but around 11, it buzzed with a number I recognized. Mrs. Hayes. The message was short and un Austen in its directness. "We are so sorry. You deserved better than tonight. If you ever want brisket and peace, our door is open." I stared at that phrase, brisket and peace, until my eyes blurred. Not justice with sirens. Quiet justice, the kind that tastes like a full plate and no questions. I didn't reply then. I didn't trust my hands. Christmas Day used to be noise and plates and the frantic tearing of tape. That Sunday, it was the slow steady of Evan's place. Coffee that tasted like walking, 2 eggs, a game rerun, and the familiar click of his keyboard when he got bored. My phone stacked voicemails that I didn't open. By the second day, friends of friends began to weigh in. "Be kind, man. December makes folks act out. She's confused. Give her a chance to explain." I wrote nothing back. A plan can hide a problem. It can also hold a boundary. Some stories want fire. Mine wanted air. Give a thing oxygen, and it shows you what it is. 2 days after Christmas, I heard from another mutual acquaintance that Tyler was no longer coming to things. January turned the calendar, and with it came a series of messages that walked the stages of grief. Denial. "You misunderstood." Bargaining. "Can we just talk?" Anger. "You're being stubborn." Sadness. "I miss you." Acceptance. Silence that felt like a door closing. In between those messages, I did what men who don't want to be angry forever do. I built. The gym at my complex empties out around 5:45 a.m., and those first weeks back, the only sounds were the treadmill belt and my own breath. There's a rhythm to work that doesn't care if your heart hurts. I leaned into it. At the office, I said yes to the dumb tasks that make managers happy. In the evenings, I tried things that required both hands. Learning to shoot in manual mode at Zilker, oiling an old leather strap, pulling the guts out of a motorcycle listing until the throttle finally respected me. I didn't post much. I didn't perform my recovery. If you'd passed me in the hall at work, you would have said I looked the same. But inch by inch, a house I used to live in, the one with panic in the walls, started to look like a place I could stay. Lauren's parents reached out once more in late January. A simple, "Hope you're okay." Mrs. Hayes added, "Our daughter has consequences to face. You don't owe us a response." I did respond that time, because kindness deserves acknowledgement. I wrote, "Thank you for the brisket and peace. Wishing your family well." That was all. Door cracked, boundary intact. The Harley happened in March, the way new things do, accidentally on purpose. Evan wanted to just look, which is how every man has ever come home with a machine. The salesman at the shop had forearms that told the truth and a voice that didn't. "This one's honest," he said, patting the tank like a dog. Evan grinned. "That's your brand." The first ride felt like learning a language I almost knew. The wind was cold but not cruel. Austen opened up along the river, and I recognized my city the way you recognize yourself in a store window and think, "Okay, we're still here." I met Sarah a week later at a Saturday photography class where everyone wore neutral colors, and one guy said bokeh too many times. She had a quiet face, the kind where curiosity arrives before judgment, and a way of standing that made the room steadier. She asked me whether I preferred to meter for the highlights or shadows, and I had to admit I still toggled and checked like a beginner. "Honest," she said, approving, and then we talked about exposure like it was weather, and about work like it was something adults do because the dishes won't wash themselves. She wasn't impressed that I woke early or that I had a 5-year plan. She liked it. "I don't want fireworks," she said, letting her camera rest against her sternum. "I want a steady town with a good diner." We didn't rush. There are two kinds of beginning, the kind that sprints and the kind that stands up straight. Ours stood. Coffee on rainy street, then a long walk where the conversation stayed in present tense. No forensic analysis of old loves, no promises lofted like balloons. I told her briefly that my December had been loud in the way silence is loud, and she nodded without asking for the tape. We can be as private as we want, she said. That sentence put something back in me that December had tried to steal. Spring found a way to look like itself. At work, the boring tasks landed me a raise. On Sundays, I'd take the Harley out toward hill country and let the corners rinse the week off. I sent my mother a photo of the bike. She replied with 3 prayer hand emojis and a helmet reminder. Evan kept being Evan, which is to say, he kept the world from taking itself too seriously. "You're back," he pronounced one night over burgers, and somehow more boring. "Good boring," I said. "The kind that gets a tax refund." Fin Chua, the invitation to the party arrived in June from a mutual friend who has never set a boundary in his life. Westlake this Saturday. New place. Come through. I RSVP'd Kyojisti yes because I say yes to life now, and because there's a flavor of courage you only taste when you don't need it yet. In the car on the way there, I told Sarah, we might see people who know old chapters. She reached across and touched the back of my hand. No dramatics, just contact. "Then we'll be polite, and we'll leave when we've had enough," she said. It's ridiculous how much power there is in a sentence like that. The house was new money, clean lines, big windows, an outdoor space, engineered to look accidental. Music threaded through conversations. Someone had put citrus in the water like hydration needed encouragement. I knew maybe a third of the faces and liked maybe half of those. 10 minutes in, I saw a familiar posture across the room, head tilted the way you tilt when you're scanning for an exit and a memory simultaneously. Lauren. For a second, my body did that old thing where the bloodstream thinks it's an alarm system. Then it passed. I felt my shoes on the floor. I felt Sarah's fingers squeeze once. The heart is an excellent student when you enroll it in the right class. We didn't orbit toward each other. We let the room do the math. I introduced Sarah to the couple hosting. She chatted with the ease of someone who doesn't need to audition. I refilled her water and made a joke about the citrus slices being unionized. We were fine. We were more than fine. And then, inevitably, that gravitational pull people confuse with fate did its slow work. I turned, and there she was. "Hi," she said. No qualifiers, no weather, no pre-apology. "Hi," I said back, because I was raised, and because words should do what they're designed to do. Up close, December had left its fingerprint. Less sleep around the eyes, a set to the mouth that says the mirror and the conscience have been talking again. "You look good," she tried. I nodded toward Sarah, who was speaking with the host about camera lenses. "I am," I said, "not boasting, just reporting." Her eyes flicked to Sarah and then back to me, a fast, sharp triangle. "Is that serious?" she asked, too quickly for the question to be casual. "It's respectful," I said. "We're careful with each other." Something in her face tightened. "So you won't even talk to me? After everything?" The room felt closer without anyone moving. I kept my voice level. "We're talking now." She stepped nearer, the space narrowing with the volume, the way people who need a scene create one. "I made a mistake," she said. "You know that." I didn't answer that. There's mercy in not making someone define mistake out loud. "I just want to," she started, and then her eyes slid again to Sarah. Jealousy is a small dog with a big bark. It yapped. "You replaced me fast," she added, loud enough that the nearest conversation clipped itself. In the corner of my vision, Evan's eyebrow climbed a rung and then settled. "Ready." I could feel the room bracing in that ugly, hungry way people do when the promise of spectacle rinses their boredom. I thought of December, of my jacket on the chair, and the ring in the pocket, and the sentence that removed a floorboard. I thought of Mr. Hayes's text, and Mrs. Hayes' brisket and peace. I thought of the way Sarah's hand had found mine On the drive over, like a lighthouse, chooses the fog instead of the clear night. I didn't owe the room a show. I didn't owe Lauren a confession. I owed myself the life I'd been building, plank by plank, when no one was looking. I took a breath that didn't try to be theatrical and said, "Lauren, this isn't the time or place." Her chin lifted, and the heat came with it. "Of course it isn't. For you," she shot back. "It never is. Everything has to be scheduled at your convenience, on your little calendar." A few heads turned. That's how fast a house can turn into a stage. One line, one tone, the oldest story in the world. Make the calm person the villain, because they won't dance the way you need them to. I opened my mouth, and then Sarah was at my side, not intervening, not posturing, just standing. "We're going to step outside for a few minutes," she told me. Like we were choosing air, I nodded. We walked past a handful of faces performing neutrality and let the glass door close with a soft click. Outside, the yard smelled like rosemary and overwatered grass. String lights did that fake constellation thing people love. I leaned on the railing and let the night be what it was. Sarah stood near me, shoulder to shoulder, an ordinary geometry I felt grateful for. "Do you want to leave?" she asked. I shook my head. "Not yet." "Okay," she said, and that was it. No advice, no cross-examination. The door behind us opened and closed a few times. Voices rose and fell. Inside life does what it does, spins around somebody else's axis and then gets dizzy. We stayed out there until my pulse stopped acting like a tiny drummer, auditioning for a louder band. At some point, Evan wandered over and delivered the report with his usual economy. "Storm's passing," he said. "Minimal damage." I huffed a half laugh. "You good?" he asked. I nodded. He scanned my face like a brother does, then tipped his chin toward the street. "Your bike looks cocky under those lights," he observed, because he knows how to change a subject without insulting it. "So do you." Then he wandered off to find a fresh disaster to narrate. When we finally went back in, Lauren was across the room again, talking to someone else, not looking our way. The room returned to normal. The kind of normal that knows it just misbehaved and wants to pretend it didn't. Sarah took my hand for a second, not for show, just to reattach what the moment had tried to sever. We said our goodbyes to the hosts, thanked them for the lemon water, and stepped into the Texas night that always feels a little bigger than whatever happened in a living room. On the drive home, the silence wasn't an absence. It was an understanding. Halfway across the bridge, I said, "Thank you." Sarah watched the road and said, "You're welcome." We didn't litigate any of it. We let the city hum. That night, when I hung my jacket on the back of the chair, a different jacket, years older, lighter by one ring I never gave, I thought about December again, and about how a plan can break your heart if the person it's built for doesn't want it. And then I thought about June, and how sometimes the plan that replaces the plan is simpler. Show up, be kind, hold your boundary, build your life. The calendar on my wall had fewer colors now. I liked the way it looked. The next morning, Austin woke up, glassy and bright, the way it does after an evening storm that didn't quite earn the title. I made coffee while the Harley clicked in the carport, cooling the way a metal animal cools. Talkative for a while, then quiet. Sarah sat at my counter with her hair pulled back and her camera on the stool, scrolling through shots from the party that were all light and geometry. No people, no drama, just the way glow sits on glass when it thinks no one is looking. "You caught the reflection of the string lights in the sliding door," I said, leaning over her shoulder. She tilted the screen. "They behaved," she said. "Most things do when you don't force them." Boy, I drove to my mother's later that day because Sunday belongs to mothers in our family. She lives north of town in a house that smells like lemon and starch, 2 rooms permanently ready for guests who rarely come. She took one look at my face and didn't ask the wrong question. "Hungry?" she said. I was. Over enchiladas and a salad that tried its best to be interesting, she asked how my week had been. I told her about the Rays, the Harley, the camera class. I told her about Sarah like you tell someone about a new park bench you trust. Solid, smooth, a place to rest that doesn't splinter. I didn't mention the party. My mother has the kind of heart that wants to drive to problems with cookies and confrontations. She looked pleased in that quiet, maternal way that carries the knowledge that love should not exhaust people. On the way home, I stopped at a gas station I used to stop at with Lauren when we were running on fumes. Sugar drinks, a bag of chips for the road. The cashier had changed. The layout hadn't. The aisle, with windshield wipes and tiny air fresheners, still smelled like every decision you make between places. It felt like standing in a doorway that didn't lead where it used to. I didn't linger. The week settled into a clean line. Work, gym, a Wednesday dinner with Sarah that tasted like focus, rotisserie chicken, roasted carrots, salt in the right amounts. We traded small stories about our days and split the check like grown-ups. And when she left, the apartment felt full instead of emptied. I slept easily. That's a new kind of wealth you can't post about. 2 days later, my phone trilled with a name I hadn't said out loud since January. Mr. Hayes. I sat down before I answered. Hello, sir. He never wasted syllables. We heard there was an incident at a party, he said. The word incident, so precise it could cut a wire. We're sorry for any embarrassment you felt. That's not how we raised our daughter. I let a beat pass, then told him the truth. I hadn't felt embarrassed. I had felt interrupted. I'm okay, I said. I'm building something good. He exhaled like a man who had been waiting to put a box down. Good, he said. That's all we hoped. Tell your mother we're still coming for brisket one Sunday, if she'll have us. I smiled. She will, I said. She keeps plates warm for months. I kept that call to myself. Not secret, private. There's a difference. You learn to hold the good words close so they aren't spent too quickly. At the end of June, the Texas heat did its full-throated thing. Even the shadows looked tired. I took the Harley out early on Saturdays to beat the sun to the hilltops. Sarah rode with me once, helmeted and careful, the kind of passenger who leans with you without asking cues. We stopped at a gas station outside Dripping Springs, where a handwritten sign over the coffee urns said, "No refunds. Coffee is coffee." We laughed and drank it anyway. That's a taste you don't forget. Burnt, honest, better with company. July brought a text from a number I hadn't deleted because deletion felt theatrical. I owe you a real apology for the party. For December, Lauren wrote. The words were clean, like someone else had edited them. I set the phone face down and waited the way you wait to see if thunder was just a truck. 10 minutes later, a second text landed. I'm getting help. I believed her and didn't. Both truths can sit in a room without fighting. I typed slowly, fingers obeying my better self. I hope you find peace, I wrote. I'm moving forward, and I wish you well. Then I turned my phone off for the evening and made a pasta I used to make for two. It tasted different and not worse. Closing chapters doesn't require someone else's signature. Still, there's a chord in you that appreciates a final tone. It arrived a week later, again from Mr. Hayes, who seems constitutionally unable to let harm float unaddressed. We've encouraged our daughter to spend some time away. She agreed. Thank you for the way you've handled things. You have our respect. I thanked him, and then because mutual respect deserves a bridge, I told him about Sarah. He asked a gentle question he had earned the right to ask. Is she kind? I said yes. He said, then we are happy for you. That was the last conversation we had. It didn't feel like a door closing. It felt like a gate left open to a field no one needs to cross anymore. Life does its adding quietly. In August, Evan dragged me to a minor league baseball game where the air smelled like sunscreen and mustard and missed opportunities. We sat too close to the field for men our age, and he heckled in a way that made the players grin instead of bristle. You're happy, he said around the 6th inning, like he'd discovered a plot hole. I am, I said. He elbowed me and nodded toward my phone. You're going to propose on a spreadsheet, aren't you? I smiled. Not a spreadsheet, I said. A list. I made the list in pencil on a legal pad because my father used to say ink tempts arrogance. I wrote down the places where a question like that should be asked, somewhere with sky, somewhere with a railing. I don't trust cliffside drama, somewhere quiet enough that a yes can take up space. I wrote down Mount Bonnell because it has a habit of making people speak softer. I wrote down Lady Bird Lake because closure can be a circle, not a door. I wrote down Sarah's porch because sometimes love likes shoes off and a citronella candle instead of an audience. I folded the list and put it under a magnet shaped like a chili pepper because Texas loves props. September cooled just enough to pretend, and with it came a series of signs that weren't really signs so much as nodes of rightness. Sarah got an email from a gallery that wanted to hang 2 of her architectural photos in a group show. My boss asked me to manage a small team because apparently doing boring things well is leadership. My mother texted me a picture of a roast with the caption, "Eat vegetables at least 3 times this week, love." I did. The Harley needed a small part that took all day to find and an hour to install. When I washed my hands after, grease ringed the sink, and I felt 13 and 30 at the same time. I asked Sarah on a Sunday, not dramatic. We hiked the steps at Mount Bonnell behind 3 families and a couple arguing low like they were trying to keep it between themselves and the yucca. At the top, Austin spread out like a map that knows where everything is. The river moved in its steady old way. I didn't kneel. Knees are for floors and repairs and prayers. I stood. "I have a plan," I said, and she smiled like she was in on the joke and the promise. I told her that my plan was boring in the best ways. Coffee, lists, laughter that isn't currency, respect that isn't performative, holidays that belong to us, quiet on the right evenings, noise on the right mornings. "Will you do steady with me?" I asked. She didn't pretend to think. She said yes, the way people say yes to second helpings of something they already know tastes good. We celebrated with tacos because we aren't people who pretend champagne is more delicious than tacos. I texted my mother a photo of our hands and the ring and received in response an uppercase litany of joy and instructions. "Call me. Also, don't forget to hydrate. Also, tell Sarah she is loved already." We called. She cried. We laughed. Evan sent a string of emojis I didn't know my phone had and a gif of a spreadsheet with hearts. And then life did its thing again. Went forward. There wasn't a montage. There were Tuesdays. There was the long, unglamorous work of setting dates, choosing a small place, making a list of guests we actually wanted in the room. There were conversations you have to have before you join lives, budgets, boundaries, the choreography of dishes and holidays, the agreements about phones at the table, and secrets and grief. We didn't script it, we were careful. Care is warmer than caution and kinder than impulse. I saw Lauren once more, months later, at a grocery store in the aisle where bread pretends to be cake. We passed each other and both hesitated, because humans do that when time gives them a chance to practice a better posture. She looked healthier. Her eyes were clearer. I nodded hello, and she nodded back. A small motion that acknowledged the size of what didn't need saying. No apology tour, no retrospective. Just 2 people buying food, the past having learned to stop dragging its feet. The week we married, the forecast tried to bring rain, and then thought better of it. We chose a late afternoon so the light would do that kindness it does to faces. Mrs. Hayes sent a card with her maiden name and a note that read, "May your tables always be full and your arguments short." Mr. Hayes didn't sign it. That's consistent with his brand of care. My mother clasped Sarah's hands like a woman who believes in the math of addition. Evan looked suspiciously composed until he wasn't, and we pretended not to see. We didn't write vows that would make strangers cry. We said true things. I will show up. I will say what I mean. I will fix the thing I can fix. I will step outside when the room gets hot. I will come back in when it's time. I will choose boring when boring means faithful. I will choose courage when courage means quiet. When we said I do, it didn't sound like a drum. It sounded like a door unlocking the way a door should. Smooth, expected, useful. People like stories with villains and flames because that's easier to draw. I've learned to love the story where the fire stayed in the fireplace, warming instead of warping. There's justice in that. Not the courtroom kind, or the comment section kind, but the kind that turns down an invitation to chaos and still ends up somewhere bright. December tried to teach me that love is spectacle or it isn't anything. June and September and all the Tuesdays taught me otherwise. Love is a plan that changes shape without losing its purpose. Love is a list you write in pencil, and a person who edits it with you. Sometimes I think about the ring in my jacket that never found its moment. I didn't return it. That surprises people. I kept it for a while. Then, one day, after we were engaged, I took it to a jeweler and traded it for credit toward the ring that lives on Sarah's hand now. The man behind the counter didn't need the story. He needed the stone. That transaction felt like a parable no one had to pretend to understand. What wasn't right for then can be part of what's right for now. I still make lists. They're shorter. Replace porch bulb is back on top. Call mom Thursday remains non-negotiable. There's a new line that reads, plan nothing this Saturday, and I defend it like a fortress. The Harley hums when I ask. The camera reminds me to notice light. Evan keeps me honest by refusing to let me narrate my life like a press release. My mother feeds us with the stubborn joy of a woman who knows that full plates keep people from picking fights. The apartment holds laughter better than silence now, though it's good at both. Every December, the city puts out the same lights. And every December, people look at them like it's the first time anyone thought to fight darkness with bulbs. We walk under them and hold our hands like it might be new. It isn't. It's older than both of us. That's the comfort. We stop on the bridge, and Sarah leans into me, and the water does its old work. Sometimes a boat passes and someone cheers. For a reason they'll forget by February. Sometimes the night is so still the only sound is shoes. I think about the floorboard that went missing under my feet once, and the way, plank by plank, I laid down a steadier one, new lumber over old beams, not because revenge demanded a monument, but because life deserved a good house. If I have advice, though no one asked and I won't force it, it's this. Don't set yourself on fire to prove you were burned. Don't throw away gentle because loud gets more applause. Choose people who don't need a stage to love you. And when the moment comes where the room leans in, hungry for a spectacle, remember you can step outside and choose air. Remember you can come back in when you're ready. Remember that living well won't trend, but it will last. We drove home after our wedding with the windows down because air conditioning is overrated when the night is soft. Sarah fell asleep with her hand in mine at a red light, and I watched the cross-traffic move like choreography, each car obeying rules so no one had to rehearse tragedy. The light turned green. I eased us forward. The radio found an old song that knew how to mind its manners. I turned it down because I wanted to hear the city breathe. I wanted to hear us breathe. And then we did the most radical, unspectacular thing two people can do after a storm. We went home.